Good morning. With the new Congress now in session, how will the new Republican leadership on Capitol Hill impact life for residents of the District of Columbia? This morning, we've invited Democratic Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton to talk about that. Welcome to Viewpoint.
Thank you, Pat.
Can we start, Congresswoman Norton, with your reaction to the tragic incident on Metro? You've called for NTS briefings, which will happen in a couple of days.
First, I want to express my condolences to the family of the one person we lost from Virginia. We shouldn't have lost a single life. We immediately asked for and got a staff briefing, but I wanted something more. I wanted a briefing of the House and Senate. As you know, some of them are away now. So we are going to have a briefing, a member briefing, Republicans and Democrats of every member of this region next Wednesday afternoon, so that we can find out at least what we need to know now. We've gotten a promise from the National Transportation Safety Board that we will have an early report less than 30 days. Now, Pat, that's really important. And I commend the NTSB for giving us that kind of early information, because it means that Metro can begin to rectify even before the final analysis of what really happened occurs. We need the earliest understanding of why people were caught in the worst way. About the greatest fear you can have if you are a Metro rider is you go into a closed car, you go underground, and then you go into a tunnel. That's scary enough for some people. Smoke, you can't get out of the car, and then there is now confirmed at least a half-hour delay. We need to know why. Was it because of our first responders, or was it, as we have also heard, instead because of the delay in closing down the third rail so that the first responders could enter the tunnel? That's the kind of information that I hope we get some clue on, at least by early this week.
And what does it suggest to you about this region's readiness for mass casualty emergencies? That's what a lot of people are concerned about.
Well, Pat, this is a kind of two tales. First, I don't want people to be afraid to go on Metro. Metro has come a very long way since we lost 9 people.
In 2009.
In 2009. By the way, all of them were D.C. residents. This was a great tragedy for our city. But it would be a great tragedy if we lost even one, as we did with this incident. At the same time that we have seen these repairs make real progress, as they've had to reinvent Metro, we have a new problem we have to ask ourselves. Even if it is a more modern Metro, are they prepared for a real emergency? Now, in the capital city of the United States, or this region, a real emergency can be a lot more than mechanical failure or even smoke in the car. It can mean a terrorist incident in the era of ISIL. So there is every reason to be concerned, first and foremost, about emergency response. The emergency response failed in almost every single respect here. I can think of no way in which we can say at least this occurred. Not when you're a half hour getting people out of a smoky car and they're told not to even go onto the tracks to escape the smoke.
Metro says it needs, COG says Metro needs $16 million to maintain...
$16 billion.
$16 billion to maintain the system and to improve safety.
Yes.
There doesn't seem to be any indication that that's going to happen. So what does that mean?
Well, we have a Congress now controlled by my good colleagues on the other side that doesn't even want to pay for the surface transportation needs of our country, roads, bridges, transit. We have been able to do, with the help of the entire region, I must say, is to get the annual $150 million that is now being used to rehabilitate the Metro system itself. That doesn't go for what you pay to get on the cars, but it does mean a system that was built in 1976 needs to be completely overhauled. That's happening now. the $16 billion is quite apart from that. And that's what we need. That's what New York needs. That's what San Francisco needs. That's what the nation needs. And that's what we've got to do in the Congress of the United States.
The Congress is now controlled by Republicans in both houses. What does that mean for the district? That's a loaded question.
Oh, all I can say to our own constituents is be not afraid. That's not the way to approach Republicans. First, don't approach them in a stereotypical fashion. It has been my fate to be for more than 20 years in the Congress under Republicans in charge, and often with a Republican president. Still, we got D.C. TAG. That's the D.C. Tuition Access Grant, which sends our children to college, double college attendance. We've done all kinds of economic development. The new wharf is being developed. The old post office into a luxury hotel. That's with Republicans in charge. All right, this is a far-right Republican Congress. We already have, I think, good indications. The kinds of indications that make me know that I begin, as I always have, to find people I can work with. Let's think of our chairman. Both of them, Chairman Chaffetz on the House side and our chairman on the Senate side, have both said they support home rule. Now, those are two conservative Republicans. You want to start that way, I'm with you. You don't fight until there's something to fight about.
All right. Well, you've got plenty to fight about, but we're going to continue to talk about the issues of the district and the new Congress with Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton right after the break. Welcome back. We're talking with Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton this morning on Viewpoint. And Congresswoman, your first bill right out of the gate was the new Columbia Admission Act to make the district the 51st state. You got a record number of co-sponsors. You started the new year with this new Congress with that bill.
Right in their face, knowing that the Republican House and Senate were not going to pass my statehood bill. We have marvelous momentum. We got the first statehood official Senate statehood hearing ever last Congress. Now, you don't just let that lie on the table.
In September.
Yes, we did, just before that Congress entered. So how do you build on that momentum? We got the largest number of co-sponsors ever for that bill. What makes this bill distinctive is this is the largest number of original co-sponsors. This the people willing to sign on at the same time I signed on, and there were 90 of them. And that means that there's enthusiasm in the House for the new Columbia Statehood Act, for us to build on so that we can build a larger movement in the city and nationwide, because our fate now lies not in the House or the Senate, but with the constituents of my colleagues.
How many of those are Republicans? Are there any?
Of course, none of them are Republicans now. But that's not unusual either. There's not pressure out there on their Republican constituents. That's got to come from us. Congress gives you nothing. You do your own momentum, and with 90 original sponsors, very few bills have more than 2, 3, maybe 10 original co-sponsors. That means people willing to get on board at the get-go. Then you go get more. And that does tell you that at least at the base, and that's where you start with. Do you at least have your own party with you? Then you go further. And I believe when the Senate decides who the new chair of the full committee is, we will be able to introduce the bill there. We do have a word of a very good chair of our appropriation committee in the Senate, Senator Coons of Delaware, who we know he supported and indeed was a sponsor of the statehood bill last time.
So you have your party with you, and you have the president with you. He's also endorsed
very important
statehood. However, Congress has taken away your vote in the committee of the whole.
Yes.
What are you doing to get that back, and what are the chances of getting it back?
Pat, when I first came to Congress, I discovered, it wasn't hard to do, that since I had the voting committee, which was created by rule, why shouldn't I have a vote in the committee of the whole? The committee of the whole is on the House floor, votes on some things, not all things. Went to the Democratic leadership. They said, ooh, nobody has ever said D.C. should have a vote on the House floor. I have to send that to outside counsel. Counsel said, yeah, Looks like if you do it by rule, you can do it. They did it. The Republicans sued them. It went all the way to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals said your discretion, and I have voted for 3 Congresses. That would mean 6 years of votes. Every time the Republicans come into control, they take away my vote. Even though, Pat, and I do want your listeners to know this, when we say taxation without representation, we don't mean the same taxes that our good friends in Maryland and Virginia pay. We mean more taxes. We pay the highest taxes per capita. That's $12,000 per person in the District of Columbia, more than the residents of any other jurisdiction. California, it's something like $8,000 per person. Mississippi, the lowest, it's $4,000 per person. So you can understand the rage that we feel when they shut down the district government or want to take away our marijuana reform law. Who in the world do you think you are? We not only have paid, we have overpaid.
We've got to take a break, but we'll continue our talk with Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton in just a moment. Welcome back. We're talking with Eleanor Holmes Norton this morning. Congresswoman Norton, talk about the showdown now in the works over D.C.'s pot law. It is law. The council has sent the bill to Congress, triggering the 30-day review period. Under the new budget, of course, the city can't spend the money, so Congress has a choice now.
Fortunately, it isn't law. I found a loophole, and I believe that loophole will stand. Chairman Chaffetz, the head of our subcommittee, or our full committee, says that there will not be a bill to overturn it because he thinks it isn't law. That means probably nothing will happen. And 30 days after this, it'll go into law. Andy Harris, the culprit, if you will forgive me, whose amendment this was, says that he thinks, therefore, the House ought to sue him if it goes into existence. I doubt that the House will sue the District of Columbia. First of all, marijuana reform is sweeping the country. Secondly, I won't be technical about this, but I don't believe the House has standing to sue. Therefore, I believe after 30 legislative days, the District of Columbia will be able to enforce our very modest marijuana reform law. 2 ounces in your own possession, no selling. We will be able to do that, have that in the District of Columbia, remembering that pot is de facto legal anyway. And so why should our African American citizens, who turn out to be virtually the only ones that get a record, spoils them for the rest of their lives because it's a drug conviction, why should they have to suffer this particular offense when essentially young people all over the United States use it? This law only conforms to practice.
And then, of course, there's still many who believe it leads to more serious drug use.
Right, and I caution my own residents, don't do it. I don't think you should smoke anything. Nevertheless, I also don't think you should go to jail for it or get a record for it.
Regarding the budget, you're seeking an agreement to permanently exempt the district from federal shutdown, so the city isn't continually caught in the crosshairs.
Our budget shouldn't be up there in the first place. $7 billion we raise on our own in the district, more than many states. I've been able on an annual basis to keep us from being shut down. This year we won't have a shutdown. I want a permanent shutdown bill. I want to keep pushing for that, and I think even the Republicans don't think we ought to be shut down when they get shut down.
You've also beaten back another attempt to kill the district's gun laws.
Oh, so important, Pat. With all the talk about marijuana reform and how I believe we beat that back and it's going into effect, the worst thing we encountered was an attempt, actually passed the House, to essentially erase all of our gun laws. Assault weapon ban and the like, was able to get that taken out of the appropriation. Perhaps they'll try again. They'll have to try again because they didn't make it this time.
We've seen a wave of protests in recent months in the wake of Ferguson and Cleveland and Staten Island, the incidents there. Police officers gathered here yesterday for Solidarity March. What do you say to those who believe there hasn't been enough in the process on the tough job that police all over this country have to do every day?
Pat, another member and I, Danny Davis from Illinois, are going to have a forum probably next month on getting a conversation between police and communities, because I don't think that there's been enough conversation about what the police do for us and how, in fact, we can have good relations. Look at us in the District of Columbia. Although we have some of the demonstrations here, they're not about the District of Columbia. The protest is about racial profiling. It's about police practices, not about the police. The police are greatly appreciated, most so in the neighborhoods where they are most needed. So we welcome the police here to demonstrate, just as they should welcome our warning to demonstrate.
Got to take a quick break. We'll continue and conclude our discussion with Eleanor Holmes Norton in a minute. Tomorrow we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and this year marks the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. There are issues on Capitol Hill that you don't think are going to be resolved by this Congress.
Martin Luther King could hardly tolerate the 50th anniversary of being faced with Chairman Goodlatte of the Judiciary Committee saying that he does not intend to move the Voting Rights Act this year. Last year we did have some Republican support with an all-Republican Senate and House, and even given the growth throughout the states, north and south, of obstacles to voting, he does not intend to move that act on the 50th anniversary. That means people have to get out here and take care of that. It's not going to move unless we do what we did to get it in the first place. We were in the streets. We made sure we left them with no alternative.
If Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were alive today, what do you think his message would be to the nation about race, about the polarization, about the fact that no one can get along and that so little is being done?
And remember, he was all about reconciliation. So while he was forthright for all he stood for, and race was only one of the things. I mean, poor people, he would be the Poor People's Campaign here in Washington. He would be talking about poverty. He would be talking about income inequality. And on the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, first thing he would be talking about would be reenact that act this year on its 50th anniversary. Perfect time to do it.
Your annual tax fair is coming up at the Convention Center. Tell us about this year's
Must do that. My constituents expect it to D.C. residents only, but on Saturday, February 21st, we will do the income taxes and give all kinds of financial advice of various kinds to D.C. residents, and we do it in no small parts because they pay the highest taxes per capita in the United States. Why should they have to pay to have their taxes filled out? So at the Convention Center, Saturday, February 21st, 10 a.m. to noon, we will do the taxes. So long as they fall within the groups that are moderate income, we will do your taxes that Saturday, February 21st, beginning at 10 a.m. And we'll do it with tax preparers, nonprofit tax preparers from all around the city who gather in the Convention Center, and thereafter they'll do them in your neighborhood.
And you generally get quite a response.
We do. Residents not only come to have their taxes done, but they can find out other things having to do with financial matters, generally about banking, about how to make sure that the children get scholarships, the many financial matters that face families today.
You mentioned at the very beginning of the program that there's nothing to fear. Do not fear, you said, should be the belief on the part of residents and those who are concerned about Congress now being controlled by Republicans. What is the overarching message that you'd like to send to D.C. residents today about how far this city has come and can go under this Congress?
Pat, I urge people to understand the mayor, for example, came to see me the day after she was elected. We already have a good partnership.
And she had her first press conference on the Hill.
She absolutely did. And so that partnership is already good. But I asked them to remember what we've gone through. Some of what I've been able to do in the Congress since almost all the time I've been in a Republican Congress, I have done with the help of very conservative Republicans who are conservative on national issues, but have been willing to help us on local issues. And I'll name some names that will be familiar to everybody. Speaker Newt Gingrich, or Darrell Issa, who was the chairman of the D.C. committee last time, very conservative Republicans. But when it came to the district, we had a partnership. Now, I'm going to approach Chairman Chaffetz in the House, a man who seemed very anti-D.C. when he came, in the same way, and his counterpart in the Senate as well. And I think, be ready to fight. For now, just help us get statehood, get out there in the city and work for it.
All right. Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, thanks so much.
Always a pleasure, Pat.
Nice to have you and to talk with you this morning on Viewpoint. I'm Pat Lawson-Muse. That's our program now. Stay with us. News 4 Today.